Kentaro Miura is the brilliant mind behind Berserk. He gave us a manga series that redefined the dark fantasy genre. His gritty line art, intense paneling, and unparalleled attention to detail have left an unforgettable mark, earning him the title of GOAT by many. Yet, despite his reputation as a master storyteller, Miura admitted that nearly all Berserk's iconic moments had zero planning, a string of brilliant ideas connected in hindsight. But in my eyes, what truly sets Miura apart is his ability to capture the raw emotion and physical weight of every scene, bringing despair and brutality and humanity to life. When we break down and analyze Miura's art style, the evolution between his earlier and later volumes is staggering. From his experimental facial styles to the increasing level of detail in his panels, his growth as an artist is undeniable. But understanding Miura's mindset gives even more depth to his work, especially how his approach to storytelling shaped his artistic choices. Miura once reflected on this process, saying, "I'd hardly thought any of it out at first. I had no idea how far I'd be able to run with just that original concept for the manga. Aside from the monster-slaying black swordsman, I had this idea that it'd be easier to give him something to fight if I added the element of revenge to it. And that was about it." This unplanned, organic approach to storytelling can be seen reflected in his art, raw, evolving, and dark. In retrospect, up until volume 3, all I had in mind was that it will be a story about anger. In preparation for starting this series, first I asked myself what it was what I had to pay attention to. And what I decided was that I would make sure that the character was angry. Miura carefully examined this emotion, thinking about how to bring out Guts' complexity. There are a lot of ways to depict anger. There's the explosive kind of anger, but then there's the kind of anger where your face loses all its color and goes expressionless. I decided I would just focus on expressing anger, and I would hope to find something to work with. And his earlier volumes are full of it. Guts & Co. express rougher, more realistic facial features. He especially emphasizes the nose and lips on most of the characters. In some instances, he even reminded me of a very specific art style. Comparing them head to head, the characters did change quite a bit though, some more drastically than others. But only a few are the same. Admittedly, characters matured alongside the story as well. Overall, the art changed, especially in the eyes and facial expressions. There's so much more convincing emotion, which gave a raw edge in the dramatic scenes. Moreover, the anatomy and facial structure became more defined, with Guts' design evolving in both physical and emotional complexity. The biggest and most powerful visual change in my view is Miura's emphasis on detail. The way he uses shadows and contrast to create depth and weight is very cool. Also, he re-edited some of the older panels like this one on the left. And although I don't know the exact reason, I think the newer one on the right is way more clear and has an overall better composition. Now here's the thing about drawing. When we were young and stupid, we used to copy stuff drawn by guys like Yoshikazu Yasuhiko and Fujiko Hosono. We used to have to draw things for class and I was pretty good at it, but I wasn't very good at manga art. So I want to learn how to draw like Fujiko Hosono, but I also want to make use of my realistic drawing abilities. And then, meanwhile, I wanted to do an intricate story like Gwyn's saga. But I also liked how over-the-top Violent Jack was. All of that gradually coalesced into my current art style. Miura masterfully uses lines to sculpt volume, creating depth and intensity in every panel. He employs cross-hatching and grayscale with an incredible attention to nuance. A technique common in manga, but one he took to a new level across entire scenes. His emphasis on contrast, carefully balancing the grayscale of black and white, brings intense depth to each composition, in especially his later works, allowing shadow and light to add weight to the storytelling. And I must say that the newest Berserk mangas do uphold his legacy in this regard. Like most mangaka, the traditional tools he started out with was the Japanese ink and G-pen, enabling fine textures and intricate nuances. Miura even noted that reproduction copies rarely did justice to his original creations. We can also see this in the original manga print and the digital print, where the ink gets washed out, suppressing even more detail. Do note that although Miura did a lot of work himself, he did also have assistants do the background characters and scenes and help with toning. Later on, he switched to digital himself, where he loved to go into the nitty-gritty details of the work. If I were to use an analogy, analog and digital, analog is like a calligrapher and digital like a craftsman. Doing something really precisely with tools versus kind of doing it based on feeling. Digital is really focused on working on the details, so a lot of time is spent on the details and sometimes you lose sight on other things. Analog, on the other hand, sometimes you can even use accidents to complete the drawing. It's like leaving it up to your own energy. And I don't know about you, but I really like his take on this. So I've seen some discussion on God's facial volume to volume consistency, and I want to take exactly this as an example to emphasize Miura's analogy. I'm not talking about stylistic changes here, rather human quirks and errors. Like God's nose or the boy's appearance, for example. Or the little things that make the face look slightly off, deformed or out of proportion. Do mind that this also depends on many factors like the scene's tone, which comical, relaxed, serious, flashback or deeply emotional. However, when we're working traditionally, screwing up and starting over takes a lot more time than it does digitally. I can imagine that working traditionally, Miura might just go with the flow. Something in the lines of he draws a panel and still needs to make his publishing deadline. The face looks clear, conveys the emotion as intended, but everything is far from perfect. It's similar to live portrait artists working in the moment, or a calligrapher flowing with their brushstrokes. Artists like Takiko Inoue and Yoji Shinkawa are good examples of that. In contrast, digital art allows the artist to adjust entity, refining the piece to near perfection. Theoretically, we can build up in such a way that you're crafting the ultimate image, without worrying about damaging the paper, misplacing an ink stroke, or forgetting an important detail. Anyways, he was open about his inspirations, acknowledging the role of classic manga, art, and movies, shaping Berserk's visual and thematic landscapes. I had read Fist of the North Star and loved it, and also thought Voiden's Jack was incredible. Looking back, a lot of those intense and even over-the-top stories are likely what pushed me into the direction of fantasy and action. He also noted that his vision was impacted by historical and philosophical ideas, challenging traditional heroism and morality. Since college, I've been influenced by all sorts of historical art and movies. These shape my understanding of not only aesthetics, but also telling stories with darker, richer themes. Miura's paneling is nothing short of spectacular. He doesn't hold back on portraying brutal, visceral scenes, pushing the boundaries of what can be shown on page. Berserk lives up to its name. Everything that's either being smashed, slashed or blown to pieces in a way feels strikingly real. Each hit shows incredible impact, cause and effect, not with the flurry of blows but with a singular, crushing strike from God's massive sword. Indeed, Berserk is one of those mangas that visually shows scenes that contain the crushing weight of energy. And perhaps more importantly, Miura conveys the emotional weight of these moments as well. Berserk may start with a straightforward premise, an angry swordsman on a quest for revenge, but the deeper, complex emotions that develop over time through the panels and full-blown illustrations. We see Guts and the world around him evolve, and Miura's art allows us to feel every step of that journey. Guts represents the human condition, or at least one aspect of it, in its unfiltered form. He's damaged, scarred, fighting against what he cannot control. And isn't that true for all of us, to some extent? And that, to me, is the essence of the manga we all know as Berserk. I'm light novel author GP Films, and people often say Miura is in a league of his own. While that is debatable, one thing is certain: nearly every panel Miura created carries a sense of gravity, as if the world he built is bound by weight and consequence. And I think any artist creating a project like a manga should put Kentaro Miura on their list. But I'm sure he's already in the top 5 for many.